I used to work in trade, and negotiation was an extremely important part of my job. Today, I'm going to share my own list of professional verbs that I used to use and hear on a daily basis. If you can memorize this list, it will make you sound much more professional in your next negotiation. Our first verb is propose. A simple one and a logical one to start with, because in a negotiation, you have to start by proposing. Of course, propose would be something you use instead of offer or suggest. Very often, we use it simply by saying, I propose something, or I'd like to propose something. Of course, you may say I, or you may speak from your company's perspective and say we. I propose we extend the contract length to 5 years. Streamline, a lovely verb, and this means to make something simpler so that it's more efficient or simply works better. There's some really common collocations with streamline, most of them related to process. I would say the top 5 are streamline a process, streamline a procedure, a task, a workflow, or relevant to today, a negotiation. Let's streamline this negotiation by prioritizing the important aspects. Leverage, perhaps one of the most important words today. This means that you're using something you already have to achieve something, probably to achieve something significant or better. You may use take advantage of or use, which are perfectly fine. But a word that I recommend to my students here is leverage when you're speaking in a negotiation or any business meeting. We will leverage our strong network to ensure a wide distribution. Reiterate. Reiterate is a very powerful verb. It just means to say again, but it has that added nuance of saying it again to emphasize or underline its importance. I think it's good to consider collocations again for this one, and we very often reiterate our commitment, a point, a statement, our position, or support. We would like to reiterate our commitment to this project. Clarify. I think this is a word that a lot of my students know but don't necessarily use. So I would say this is another fairly powerful verb you should be using. It's when you're confirming what you mean by making it a little simpler or easier to understand. Normally in a negotiation, you clarify your position or you ask the other party to clarify their position or what they mean. A common question I would ask would be, could you clarify what you mean by this? Could you clarify the terms of the product warranty? Mitigate means to make something less severe, less of a problem. Let's go through a few more collocations. You mitigate risks, mitigate impact, damage, effects, or issues. Now, you've heard me use the word collocations a few times this lesson, and I've mentioned it in previous lessons, but just remember, collocations are common combinations of words. So when we say mitigate risks, that's probably the most common combination of words, the most common way you will find this word in the English language. So it's a great way to learn new vocabulary and make it stick, make it something you can actually use in your speaking. Rectify simply means to make something right, to make it correct. So it's quite an easy one to memorize because correct, rectify, there's a strong connection there with the words. And I would use this in business English instead of saying to make something more correct or to make it right again. I would say let's rectify that thing. We really need to rectify all the payment issues before we move forward. Compromise, an incredibly important one for negotiation. This means that you're changing, probably reducing your demands in order to find some common ground or in order to get to an agreement with someone, you're always going to have different demands from the other party. And if you stick to those demands, you'll never find an agreement. So very often, both parties will need to compromise to some extent. We're willing to compromise on the initial order quantity if you can offer a discounted price. Table. Another very negotiation-specific verb. This means that you kind of put something aside in order to deal with it later. So when you say you're going to table something, it means, okay, let's put it to the side, we'll deal with that later. So very often you will table a discussion, or you'll table a proposal. You'll table changes. So all these things perhaps the other party wants or you want, but okay, let's deal with that later. Let's table those items. Let's table the discussion on pricing until we understand each other's positions better. The perfect way to finish today's list is with the word finalize, which of course means to make it final. I think this is a pretty obvious one. I don't know if you use it. Some of my students know it but don't use it, so do be aware of what you know versus what you use. But of course, this will very often come towards the end of a negotiation. Our next step should be to finalize the pricing structure. Okay, there's your list of 10 professional negotiation verbs. Now let's make sure we memorize them so you can use them in your next negotiation. I'm going to give you my short script, which includes all 10 verbs. Listen to it, practice your listening, and then, if you can, memorize it. It's a great one when you're commuting to work. Recite this script and it will help you memorize. During the negotiation, I decided to propose a new offer to streamline our partnership agreement. I suggested we leverage our company's strengths to benefit both parties. I had to reiterate my points throughout the negotiation to ensure everyone was on the same page. When some terms were unclear, I took the time to clarify any misunderstandings. I outlined specific safeguards to mitigate potential risks, and when an issue was found in the initial draft, I quickly moved to rectify it. To reach an agreement, we both had to compromise on several terms. We agreed to table a few less critical items for future discussions, but by the end of the negotiation, we were able to finalize the main points of the agreement. Okay, if you made it this far in the video, let me know in the comments by giving me a thumbs up emoji. That's how I know who is dedicated to upgrading their professional business English. If you liked today's lesson and you want more content and lots of free lesson material, head to britplus.net. That's my home. That's where I keep all of my lessons and content, and I will be adding much more in the near future. I really hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Of course, if you did, do let me know by liking the video and commenting. I read every single one and I'll respond to you as soon as I can. Good luck with your next negotiation. I'll be back next week with another lesson and another step to becoming a global leader.